Boa tarde a todos. Bem-vindo ao The Scout Life, episódio 7. Nesse episódio iremos falar sobre a performance e teremos um convidado de linha, uma lenda na área da performance e do treinamento, é o Bryan Mccall, o amigo, o professor, uma pessoa intuitiva, extremamente dedicada naquilo que tem feito nos últimos anos. Ele é o diretor e simplesmente o responsável pelos múltiplos centros de desenvolvimento do glorioso Michael Johnson Performance. Depois iremos dar a página web onde poderão verificar essas informações. É já nos trazer à tona o que é a performance dentro da ciência, o que eles têm feito para ser com tanto sucesso. Sem mais documentos, irei introduzir Bryan. Yo!
Hey, what's up?
The man himself, the legend.
Hey,
Welcome,
what's
bro.
up? Good to see you, man. It's been a while.
Oh, it's been like what, 10, 12 years?
At least 10. At least 10.
God damn, you look young, man. I like the sneakers on the back, you have old school representation, and that's
Hey, my kids love Nike, man. So we had to represent it. These guys are shoe heads, sneaker heads.
Damn. I'm a Nike and Jordan guy, definitely old school.
Number one brand in the world.
Oh yeah, of course.
Yeah.
So, Bryan, for those guys who doesn't know you, I want you to give me like a tips and introduction of what you've been doing for the past 20 years at Michael Johnson Performance. You as a reference, and then we're gonna go over your job and the whole team that you have here. Just to remember everybody that today we're gonna talk about performance and the definition and more that we can help us to grow sports in Africa and the understanding of what performance means and how it can be useful for players. So now I have to go in Portuguese. Sorry. Todos aqueles que tiverem algumas perguntas podem fazer. Iremos apresentar ao Bryan e de certeza ele irá dar uma resposta. Já temos aí a Lilian Evra, que já entrou. Hello. She will be our guest next week. She will talk about skills, I guess, abilities. So she will have some question for you. So please, Bryan, it's on you. Tell us about you and your connection with Angola.
For sure, yeah. So I'm currently the director of high performance at Michael Johnson Performance. We're located in Dallas, Texas, and McKinney. It's been a great experience to be able to work with these high-level athletes. We just recently completed our 13th year doing NFL combine training. We had a banner year. We had 75 athletes in the program, which is the most of all time. We had 24 guys get drafted, which was the most in the entire country. So be able to start here in my 21st year, to be able to have some of those successes and some of the reasons why I got into training was to help athletes get better. And to see that in year 21 that I'm still doing those same things that I've always had that passion to do. It starts back in 1999 for me. I was a collegiate strength conditioning coach here in Dallas at a university called Southern Methodist University. I started there as a volunteer, became a graduate assistant, and moved my way up to a full-time assistant position. It's those kind of situations and environments where you learn how to coach. You really start to understand your passion for coaching and helping people get better. From there, I was lucky enough to go out to Florida State to work with their football team. We were a top 5 program at that time. We battled in yes.
Yeah, I remember
football. But I was just able to work with some really good coaches at Florida State. I mean, Coach Bobby Bowden, who is a legend, coach for 30 plus years. You get to learn how to be a better coach, how to connect with the athletes. I learned that it wasn't just about X's and O's, it's about the mental aspect and athletes' well-being. From there, I got into the private sector, and I've been in the private sector since 2003. I was able to hook up with Michael Johnson and Lance Walker to be able to help them establish Michael Johnson Performance as a global leader in performance training. The learnings that you get from leadership like that is invaluable. You're talking about Michael Johnson, a person that's the best of all time in his discipline. Yes, I learned from him that it's about mindset, because a lot of athletes have physical ability. Most of them do. World-class athletes do. And it's really about mindset, determination, this willpower, something that makes you a little bit different than everybody else, is really what sets you apart. And those are some of the things, the DNA of our business is really founded on his mindset. And so I think that's why we're still standing strong today.
Great. That's perfect. So I will jump a little bit about how we connect, because basically you look like my brother, but with hair, because I'm bald hair. Just a little quick back here. You remember Shimo Evans? Remember Shimo? Yeah, brother, just in there. For sure, you will have a lot of questions for you. It's going to be our last guest on the last episode. He's a Kentucky legend. As my boy, I learned from him. So you have to come here, tell us how was it to have an African guy who talk a lot like me to dunk on him. Love you a lot. Shimo, we have Coach Orlando Simons.
Okay.
He coaches Shimo too. He's a good friend. He helped me to build the concept. At such a point, he was our guest last weekend. We have a great show about high performance cycle. He helped a lot to understand that point. So about you and Angolan connection.
Yes.
We met 2000 and what? 2000.
That was 06, 07.
No, no. 05.
05. Yeah. 05.
Something like that. So we went there with Pedro.
Yep.
And then we that was like, for who knows, we were like me, Victor de Carvalho, Tony, Shimo Evans, Abdel Bukar. We have a lot of cats, So awesome. We work out with you for how long? Like
2 weeks? It's a 2-week training camp.
Yeah.
It was an immersive. I mean, it was everything. It was my first time to do something like that. We'd only trained American athletes and really just local athletes before that. We'd never had an international camp before. But I know you guys were intrigued with our facility, because we had a basketball facility, we had performance training, we had therapy. It was all in one spot. And then we brought the meals in. We had the total package. And so that was my first real experience with high performance training. When you guys came in here, and what I think about when I think about high performance, it's adding all the elements of performance. It's not just the strength work or the speed work, but you layer in the skill training, you layer in the massage therapy and the physical therapy, you layer in all those recovery elements and the nutrition package, and then the sleep and recover. It was incredible to see that unfold, and I've never forgot that experience, because it gave me a vision of what it's supposed to be. And so I've always kept that, that experience with me throughout my 20-year career, and I've always tried to model it. But what I noticed with the Angolan team is the respect for the training process and the appreciation to be coached. A lot of athletes don't appreciate coaching, and they don't appreciate the process. And what I felt when I worked with the team was like there was just a level of respect and appreciation that somebody was giving you their time and their expertise and knowledge, and that you wanted to soak it up and absorb the moment. And I'll never forget that. I was like, that's the way an athlete's supposed to be, and with my young kids, I always try to hand that down to them and say, man, I've been around athletes with a certain mindset. They respect the process, not even just trust it, they respect the process, and they appreciate someone else laying down some of their time to help them out. So that's what I take away from those moments.
Oh, that was
awesome.
And you remember Victor Carvalho, the light-skinned guy, the shooter?
Yeah.
You had, how old is he? I'm like, he's 30, 36, 37. And he was like, you can jump like that. And I was like, he's a good guy, and he was an OG and back in the days, and he played till he's 40, something close. And our point guard Lutonda played until 45.
Wow.
Yeah. We have a lot of fun, and that was really great. So
we were really all kind of the same age. I'm 44 right now. And so we were all kind of, isn't that crazy? We're all kind of the same.
Going straight to 42, but Evans is maybe like 62, and Shimo right there is maybe like 52, because he got like a white beard and everything.
Right. Yeah.
But shout out to my guy, man, the Kentucky legend. You know that he got inducted in Kentucky. He be in sport illustration. He played with Stephen Marbury. You know, that year that they won the championship. He's a real legend down there, man. He was such a great grace to have him as a friend.
Yes.
And as a teammate. And in Dallas, we have fun, you know, because the first thing when you arrive on the team, all the coaches say, you talk around and you mess around with everybody, but without Victor, because he's crazy. It was the guy I want to be friend with, you know, and so that we be such a great friends.
It was awesome.
We have we have Ed Nielsen. We have right away questions. We can respond this question and go to the first topic. So, Edmilson asked in Portuguese, qual é a diferença de trabalho com atletas de diferentes modalidades? What is your experience to work out with different kind of athletes who are from different type of sport? Like you have soccer, you have basketball, American football, all mix of them. What are the difference between the workout that you do, what you do each?
Yeah, it's a great question. You know, fundamentally, they're all about the same. You know, an athlete has different directions that they have to move. They've got frontal, they've got this lateral, they've got linear. They have all these different patterns they have to do. But then there is some specificity in the energy systems that they use. And so, you know, some energy systems are very anaerobic. They're high burst. They're 5 to 6 second bursts. Some are a little bit longer. Basketball players, they're 30 seconds at a time, you know? So
if you go too far, I will be seriously. There's a lot of inputs. And boys or speak Portuguese, they have to understand what's going on. So, Edmilson, Bryan diz que quase todos os desportos são similares. Há muitas coisas que podes encontrar no futebol americano que encontras no futebol ou no basquetebol ou no handball, porque tens 6 segundos, outros são 7 segundos, onde tu queimas bastante calorias ou energias, onde tu avanças, recuas, saltas e recuperas. Yeah. Keep going.
Yeah, and I think, you know, with the energy system, then there's typical injury sites, you know, and so a basketball player, you talk about jumping knee, or a tennis elbow with a tennis player, a golf elbow. So you have to be able to address typical usage patterns for these athletes to be able to make sure they stay injury free. Hold on one second.
Okay, great. Então, o Mike, o Bryan disse que para cada uma dos esportes temos um tipo de lesões. Hoje o tênis é o cotovelo, o basquete é o joelho por causa dos saltos. E o tênis é a parte do ombro, enfim, e vice-versa. A ideia é manter um mais alto nível, reduzindo as lesões. Okay, Bryan?
Yeah.
So, this is it for this question?
Yeah, and that's pretty much your main ones, your energy system and your typical usage sites. You got to make sure you address that. Fundamentally, you can train most athletes about the same. They all need speed. And we'll go through this a little bit later. They need strength, they need mobility, they need strategy, they need all these different key elements and components of athleticism. But there are some tweaks and some specialties that you have to address.
Okay. So my older brother asked a question. You know, you have to respect the age. So Frank asked, será que atletas de diferentes maneiras podem ter a mesma preparação física? So he asking. It's almost the same question, but it's asking if like different athletes for several sports can be trained the same way.
They can, and so you can do it by phases. So early on, say you're early in your off season, you can have a general preparation phase, and this is where you don't want to be specific to a sport. You want to kind of get away from training like the sport that you play, just to rebalance the body back out. The reason why injuries typically happen, especially from a chronic standpoint, is this repetitive strain pattern injury. You do the same pattern over and over and over.
Wait, this is an important insight right there, because I got myself, you know, you was training me after my surgery, and you know, this is really important that I want to share for the young cat. Hopefully that they can listen and don't make the same mistake that we did.
Yes.
So, realmente, a pergunta é muito boa, Frank. E o Bryan disse assim: é possível, sim, treinar atletas de outras modalidades com treinos similares. A ideia, muitas das vezes, é para reenquadrar o corpo, reduzindo a tensão sobre certos músculos que são muito usados por uma certa modalidade. Isso é uma questão de reequilíbrio, reforçar outros músculos que não estão a ser utilizados com frequência em certas modalidades. Por exemplo, temos, sei lá, o atletismo, onde é mais pernas e outras coisas. Enfim, é mais ou menos nesse sentido. Please, keep going.
Yeah, and I think that's something that I think a lot of people overlook in your training. You think, well, I'm a basketball player. I need to train like a basketball player all year long. And the musculoskeletal system breaks down. It eventually breaks down, and it actually shortens your career. And so to train like they used to call it cross training, to train like a different type of sport, where it's more this general movement pattern, fundamental movement skills, is so important to have a segment of time where you focus on just the generalization piece of it. And even going further with that, there's really, people are really interested in how to specialize. And I think there's sports specialization. You have to do that. You have to look at the individual body. So, through screening and testing, this person has a tight hamstring or a tight shoulder. We need to address that. But then there's also age specificity. And you've got to be able to bias the program based on the age category you're working with. So when we try to filter a program, we look at age, sport, and the individual.
Okay. We have someone who have another opinion, a little bit different of yours. Is Lillian Egora, or she has like an MBA in sports and health, and she have a license in sports biomechanics. So a preparação física tem que ser segundo cada modalidade, porque tem de existir transfer de preparação para treino específico de cada modalidade. So she made an affirmation that each sports must have a specific type of training, because each of those specific type of training will help to transfer their preparation to a training area.
That's right. She's exactly right.
But for what you give it to us is like, yes, you can do that, but also to keep a longer range of players'
health.
Life, health,
longevity.
You can do sit up and bounce it up, some other type of exercise. So let me do Portuguese, at least let me translate.
That's right. It's always about timing. And so there's certain times where I want to really be specialized to the sport. And so middle of the off season, preseason, right before you go and play in season is when you really want to be specific as possible so that it's transferable to your sport. And so those are those times where you have to do that. Early off season and postseason needs to be as general as possible. And so you have these time blocks where you have different emphases within those time blocks.
Okay.
It's a balancing act, basically.
Okay, Lillian, what Bryan acabou de dizer foi que haverá blocos de tempo depois dos treinos específicos de cada modalidade, onde o corpo do atleta precisa de reconstruir-se. Aí, nesses momentos, há transferes de outro tipo de exercícios para reforçar a musculatura e reduzir a tensão que é usada nos treinos específicos para cada modalidade. So, you have something more to add on it? We can jump on the first topic.
Good.
You good? Lillian, Lillian, tudo bem? Podemos avançar? Okay. Então, let's move forward if nobody else have a question. Bryan, tell me, what mean for you performance?
Yeah, when I think about performance, I look at like an actor on a stage performing. It's a showcase. And so it's basically the summation and showcasing of all the athletic qualities or components. We're basically looking at someone's physical abilities on display. And so you have a baseline performance, and the goal and reason why people come to a person like me or to an organization which I work in is to increase performance. And so I want to take my physical qualities, my athletic components, and I want to enhance them, and I want to perform better.
Okay. So yeah, this is like really concise information. And we're performing because they pay us to perform, to give result.
Yes.
To the team or the organization that you'll be involved to. And now tell me, how can you measure the impact of your training on athletes? When are you sure that they're ready to go to actually perform?
Yes. Yeah, the only way is through testing, evaluation, essentially. And so we do have a little bit of a presentation here that we can go through the slides, but this is where you've got to be able to first define what are the components of athleticism. And then I want to be able to test each one of those components and be able to see how I'm improving or regressing in those components. It also gives you some sort of direction on where to focus. Some athletes have a tremendous amount of speed. Some athletes need more strength work. The only way I would know that, besides just me subjectively looking at them, I've got to be able to put some metrics to it and put some objectivity to it so I can identify what direction to go with this athlete.
Great. So can we jump to the PowerPoint now?
Yes.
Okay. No question internal. So we're going to go. Vamos diretamente no PowerPoint que o Bryan preparou para poder explicar um bocadinho essas fases entre velocidade, reação com resistência, explosão, força. So it's on you. You have to put the plate on there. Okay, there we go. Yep, perfect. Just have to click play on it, and yeah, perfect.
Okay, so basically, when we talked about defining athleticism, this is the components of athleticism broken down into these 6 different areas. The most common one that people understand completely is speed, strength, and stamina. Those are very traditional in the performance training industry and realm. The ones that are a little bit more abstract and on the edge, the fringes, is the strategy, the skill, and the suppleness. But before you start any programming or any ideation about training, you got to be able to have a definition of what athleticism is. And basically, when we're talking about performance, we're seeing the display of athleticism.
Okay.
Now you can go deeper, and so you can break these qualities down, these components, into subunits. For speed, there's an acceleration component, there's a max velocity component, and then there's an agility or changing direction. And athletes can be good at some and not good at others. So I couldn't make a blanket statement and say, this athlete is fast without saying he's specifically fast in acceleration, but he may not be fast in max velocity. So I can distinguish the speed subcomponents really well. Some athletes do a great job at max velocity, but cannot change direction. This would be an athlete like a track athlete. If you see them sprinting high velocities, but put them on a basketball court and they can't change direction. So through testing, I can identify that. Next one is strength. Everyone's very familiar with maximum strength. How much force can I develop at limit? But some of the other ones there are speed strength, which is basically power. If we look at power, it's very convertible to sport and performance. And then the final one there is just repetitive strength or strength endurance, the ability to sustain contractions. Next one is conditioning, metabolics, or stamina. We kind of talked about this. This is where you can subdivide sports by their energy system requirements. Some sports, like American football, are very anaerobic, alactic, very short bursts. A 400-meter runner is going to be very lactic. He's going to have to run for 45 seconds to 75 seconds continuously. Then a marathon runner is aerobic. Suppleness, very hard to define this one, but we see it all the time. You look at suppleness, you're talking about range of motion. You look at a person that has good mobility, has great range of motion with very few restrictions. We would define him as being very supple. We've also had the ability to layer in stability as part of that too. Some athletes are very mobile, but they're not stable. And so through testing, we can distinguish that and add in more stability type training if they need it.
So I have a question, right?
Yes.
Here about mobility and stability. So for you, which sport that really I will need some water. I'll be learning a lot of stuff with you again. Look, which sport need more stability and which one need more mobility?
Yes.
The
Yeah. So you're looking.
the main sport, tell me like on the top 4 sports most, valuable in the world,
Yes.
which one need more stability? Which one need more mobility?
Yes. If
Which
you
one?
look at sports that require mainly agility or a change of direction component, you're going to have great mobility to be able to play that sport. A basketball player, a tennis player, a soccer player has to be mobile to get to some of these different areas of the court or the field. It's a requirement. The ones that are not as mobile, they don't tend to last long in that sport.
So that happens, man, like
Yeah.
the big man. Yeah, okay.
Yeah. Now, if you look at a volleyball player, may not require as much mobility. They don't need as much range because the dimensions of the court are much tighter. They're smaller. So body type really dictates how well you're going to do in a sport, and that's why talent ID and
flexibility to attack, right? No?
Yes. Now you're talking about stability. You're looking at sports that require contact. So when I look at stability, I think about American football, offensive linemen, defensive linemen engaging one another. Yes.
This monsters. Yeah. Okay.
Tremendous
So now,
stability.
before you jump to skills, because I know that this is gonna be a point that we're gonna have a lot of things. So tell me, can you transfer at such a point for basketball? Now we're on basketball.
Mm-hmm.
Some training exercise for football players to a basketball player at such a point of his preparation? Yes or no?
Yes, you can. You can take some of those elements and apply them directly. So if you look at a basketball player playing defense, guarding somebody, and you look at an offensive lineman in American football, they're essentially doing the exact same movement patterns. They're sliding, they're trying to stay in front of the person, and they're protecting a target that's behind them typically. And so you can see some of those elements where they are transferable. I can have a big 300-pound to 120-kilo offensive lineman train like a basketball player and will help him in his sport.
All this space.
Yes, that's how that kind of they're transferable essentially.
Okay, that's perfect. We have another contribution from Lillian. Let me see. O treino de capacidade para melhorar o desenvolvimento das habilidades, skills. So she said right here, the train of capacity can get better and improve skills. So you can say capacity training can help to improve skills. So this is an affirmation on her position about suppleness. So you go to skills. Yeah, let's go.
Yes.
Skills.
Yes. And so, our definition of skill in the performance sector is a little bit different than the traditional sport-specific skill. We're talking about general motor patterns and movement skills. Basically, the word now is the fundamental movement skills. And so that's kind of what we're talking about when we talk about skill here. But it's the first one is spatial orientation and balance. It's the ability to know where the limbs are in space. To kind of know where you're, almost like a gyroscope in an iPhone, to kind of know where you're at, how to orientate your body, and still have the ability to perform in a sport. Balance is really this kind of global sort of correction or rightening of the body, stabilizing equilibrium in a global standpoint. If you look at the definition of equilibrium, it's usually some sort of perpendicular force that comes in and tries to knock you off balance. And so we're always trying to make sure our athletes are balanced by training that. The next block here is the kinesthetic and movement adequacy. Basically, it's how much effort, when you talk about kinesthetic differentiation, how much effort is required to be able to execute on a task. If I'm shooting a free throw and it's 15 feet away, there's a certain amount of force that I have to apply to get the ball in the hoop. If I step back 2 feet, that force requirement changes. And so as you're looking at young kids, as the development, they struggle with differentiating between how much force, how much skill and angle should I put into this task compared to someone who's a little bit older and has more control over their body. So that's when we talk about kinesthetic differentiation. That's what we're talking about. Movement adequacy is basically being adequate and efficient in your movement quality, doing just enough to be economical in your movement. I wouldn't want to, if I'm gonna have to run 1 yard, I wouldn't want to put as much effort into that 1 yard as I would going 100 yards. So do you have the appropriate amount of movement effort that's required for the task at hand, basically is what we're talking about there. Rhythm and reaction is basically a cadence. Do you have a cadence? Do you have a certain tempo? If you look at a volleyball player that goes up to hit a ball, there's this kind of this left, right, left tempo that they have, and they've built this rhythm. A basketball player going up to dunk, you have this 1, 2, 3 on a dunk. That rhythm can be learned and it can be trained from a very gross motor patterns perspective through performance. And then reaction is your ability to react to a stimulus, either a visual reaction or even reacting to the floor, to the ground. If I want to change direction, the nervous system is very heightened at a young age to really make a big impact on reaction training. So we think that that's another skill that can be improved early on in life.
Perfect.
Yeah. And then strategy is how you think. And so we talked about, the Michael Johnsons of the world. Those guys have really strong mental capacities. They think a little bit different. So you have these first 5 qualities, which are all really physical qualities. And what I've seen in my career is a lot of athletes are kind of the same in those first 5. You can be strong, you can be fast, you have great stamina, great suppleness, and great skill. But the one that may be the difference maker is how do you mentally cope? What kind of willpower strategies do you have? What's your grit or your determination strategies? Are you able to justify and cope with losing and overcome some of those situations and environments you get yourself into? Do you make good decisions on recovery strategies, nutrition, sleep? Are you selecting the best recovery modalities to help you out? Those are some of the strategy buckets, and they're more the mental side of it, which is really proven to be the differentiator.
Okay. Great. This is really great insight right there. Oops. We passed already?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Early to ripped. All right. Early to roped.
Yep. So this is kind of going off of those buckets we just talked about. And so you had the skill, the suppleness, speed, the strength. And so in training, a lot of questions are, well, how long does it take for me to get a training effect in those areas? If you look on the left pyramid here, suppleness is basically mobility, the flexibility, the stability. You can get a training effect very, very quickly in stretching or mobilizing or stabilizing. You can happen within a minute. You can get an improvement. In our skill bucket, we talked about the movement adequacy, the kinesthetic differentiation. It can be done in a day. I can teach you how to run in 1 day, how to run better than you were when you got here. I can teach you how to shoot a basketball in 1 day. What about your arm? Yeah, those kind of things. Those things can be. Yes.
You remember when we get to US, you put all the petrol team on the wall teaching how to improve the running motion. You remember?
That's exactly right.
Everybody, like the old school guys and the old G and the youngest rookies, you're like all on the wall and learning really like that motion. And I learned when I tried out in the league, that was like all the basics
Yes,
from putting the ball on the wall, running mechanic on the wall,
that's exactly right.
sliding technique. You have to perform it all your life
That's
because it's the
exactly
basics
right. Yes,
to improve with weights, with the other things that you want to do in the future.
that's exactly right. Yep. And those skills, they're the
Mhm.
foundation of performance. And so I've had better skill sets. All those
So basically,
qualities lead to better performance.
you can help to actually to faster if at least don't know how to execute the right motion of the
Yes.
running,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Uh,
Yeah, because it used to be where the people would say, "Well, you're just born fast," and it's true. You can have better genetics that lead you to a predisposed speed, but you can also run more mechanically sound for safety reasons, one, but also two for performance enhancement. So skill is the foundation of all performance. If you look there next to that, it's speed. You can get faster pretty quickly. One, if you have the right skill and you expose your body to these high velocity actions, the nervous system learns so quickly that it remembers. The body remembers pretty quickly how to move at those velocities. So these are things that can be sort of upskilled pretty quickly. If you look at everything in the blue and the gray there, those are all nervous system adaptations. The nervous system is always alive and ready to go and to adapt very quickly. That's why you can get some of those training effects very fast. If you move down the pyramid here, these are some more enzymatic or structural adaptations that take longer. So for me to improve in stamina, it's going to take me 2 to 4 weeks to improve in stamina. And the reason why is the body has to change chemically. I have to develop more enzymes. I have to develop more mitochondria inside the cell. I have to do some of these structural changes that take time. They're not as neuro or not as quick as some of the other ones in the blue.
Okay.
Yeah, and then strength down there. Strength takes a while to see a training effects. You have to commit to strength. Usually, best practices you're going to lift minimum of two, usually 2 to 4 times per week. And so it's going to take you about 5 weeks to see some sort of training effect in strength.
Wait. This is something. So you now, but for real, like hey, I just cut something for me now.
Yes.
So you said that lifting weights from a high performance athlete 2 to 3 times a week, you will only feel the effect of it 4 to 6 weeks after,
Yes.
right?
Yep.
So
For you to
okay.
get a training bump. That's correct.
So let me translate that in Portuguese. Okay, this
Okay.
is important. O Brandes, os atletas de alta performance, eles vão levantar ferros ou fazer pesos 2 a 3 vezes por semana, mas só a partir da quarta ou a quinta semana é que eles vão começar a sentir o efeito desse treinamento. Ok, keep going.
For sure. Yeah, and so that's the left side, those pyramids, that's the training effect. And then on the right side is the detraining effect. So how long before I lose what I've gained? You always hear you use it or lose it. It's very true. And so it's the opposite of the antagonist here. So on the blue side, everything that I've learned really quickly through my nervous system, I can lose it very quickly as well. Skill, I can lose very quickly. Suppleness, mobility, flexibility, stability, I can lose those things very quickly. And so
Muscle have memory.
you do. So
Muscle.
we're talking at peak performances. And so
Okay.
yeah, so I will always know how to ride a bicycle. I'll always know how to shoot a basketball, but I won't be at my peak. And so if I don't always constantly practice some of these elements or these tasks, I will lose them. And speed's the same way. So speed, every 5 days, if I don't touch a 90 or a 95% effort and speed, my performance will start to lose some of its peak values. You see there now we start to get into some of the endurance. Endurance lasts a little bit longer, and the reason why is because remember, these were more structural adaptations. The body has made chemical changes, it's made structural changes, and so these are not neuro are kind of flash in the pants. These are built in, so it takes longer for them to decay. And so that's why you see this 15 to 30-day window where your stamina can maintain for a little bit longer. And then finally, if you look back there at maximum strength, if I've spent 5 weeks getting a training effect, it's going to last for a pretty long time because I've changed the muscle tissue. I have more tissue now. The cross-sectional area is bigger. There's some structural changes that have happened that allow me to elongate the strength capacities.
Going on the presentation, they just text me that my song come with echo, so I will go pick it up a phone, so I will be on backstage, but keep going on the presentation, coming back.
Okay. So yeah, so as we define some of these elements, the components, the goal is always to develop those components not in a linear fashion, but almost this, I always call it like a spherical or a growth of a balloon. It's like putting air in a balloon. They expand all at the exact same time. And so I want all those 6 buckets to increase in a concentrated and collaborative parallel format where they all improve at the same time. And that's kind of that balloon type growth, not a linear growth. We always get asked how to target and how to specialize. Okay. And so we had talked about, you have to strain or filter your programming through age, through sport, and through the individual. So this is one of the things that we like to do is by age, really kind of target specific elements or components of athleticism, just because we don't want to waste time trying to work on things that aren't that modifiable at a young age. And it's
okay, wait. You just say something. You say modifiable at a young age.
Yes.
You see, so people have to understand that our foundations will predict our future.
Yes.
Right.
That's right.
So
exactly
what kind of advice from this matter you can give to trainers in Africa?
Yes. So you want to target by age. So we talk a lot about this synergistic adaptation where just by growth and maturity, humans get better. But we want to be able to layer on some smart training protocols and progressions and plans to enhance that embetterment, to make it happen faster. And so if you look at, these are almost common sense, but for an elementary school age, 9, 10, 11s, there's no reason to focus really on heavy strength training. That's an inappropriate training strategy for that age group. And so instead of that, we want to work more on some of those key targets there that are bolded.
We have 3 questions. Edilson Mendes Abreu asked this one. I will go in Portuguese and then I'll go in English. He said, qual é a melhor forma de avaliar atleta que está com ritmo de jogo ou competição diferente? How can you, what's going to be the technique or the way you will evaluate athletes who have a rhythm of plays like games or competition in different sports? Like, for example, you have like a soccer now, American football player and like an NFL player and an NBA player. How can you evaluate them?
Yeah. So for the NFL guys, that's why they have the National Football Invite Combine every year in February. And so they bring up 300 of the top collegiate athletes in the country, and they'll test them. They'll look at their physical ability, some of the things that we talked about, speed and strength, agility and things like that. But they also want to look at their sport-specific skill. And most of it is really subjective. They'll take them through a battery of tests that a typical wide receiver will do. They'll have them run routes, and they'll compare the way this athlete A looks compared to B, C, and D. And a lot of it is subjective eyeball, which is still good. I think we're trying to move to where we can have more objectivity in it, more validation with metrics, putting GPS sensors on and accelerometers and things like that. But right now, it's up to the coach's eye, which is proven to be effective over the years. But we still want to be able to add more sort of meat to that evaluation tool. But that's the way the NFL does it right now. It's basically have them do movements that they would typically do in their sport and basically evaluate their quality of movement versus their competitors.
Okay. We have
On the performance
Sarah.
side, it's pretty simple. We look at those traditional performance battery of tests, 40-yard dash, 5-10-5 agility, vertical jump, broad jump for explosive power. We look at a bench press for strength. So you have some of those more traditional elements for extracting their pure performance on a physical side.
So we have people from Dallas, recognize you from AID, Dallas, Sarah Gaylor. You remember her?
Yes.
Yeah, from Dallas,
Wow.
Our country girl's sister. And she was on the show. She be doing well. How long you didn't see her? I know that you guys just on opposite place during the year, but she been doing well. She worked with the NBA at such point in India. Then she's back working as a scout for a team, and she been doing a lot of things with the G League, etc. So definitely someone that you must keep in touch with. I will make sure that we connect as she's in Dallas right now. So
that's awesome.
Yeah, you're going to college prep, right? That's the third point.
Yep. So this is your high school athlete. So obviously it's time now to start engaging in strength, getting closer towards that heavier strength pattern. These guys are typically, and gals are starting to slow down in their growth rate. The bones are starting to harden up. They're ready for intensified loads. So yeah, this is the time now to really focus on the strength side of it. And then you start getting into the sport specific energy system and stamina.
Perfect. So when you say loading, is about how old you think that the athlete can start loading up serious weight for his age?
Yeah, I think it's around that high school. So girls a little bit earlier. They usually go through their growth spurt at 11 and a half to 12 years old. Girls can start lifting heavier earlier because they slow down in their growth.
Really?
Yeah. That's crazy. So boys usually around 13 and a half, 14 years old is when they go through their growth spurt. Girls are usually 2 years ahead of that. So 11 and a half, 13 years old. So they can start the heavier.
Wait.
Earlier.
You say that girls with 11 to 12 years old can start loading up weight, and boys must start 2 years later, maybe with 13, 14 years old. I have to say that in Portuguese.
Yeah.
This is tough. As a man, you kill my proud right there. Então, segundo o Mike, a ciência apresenta que, segundo o Bryan, é aquilo que o desporto apresenta, que as mulheres, a partir dos 11, 12 anos, já podem começar a levantar peso e como é que chama? E apresentar esse desempenho muscular 1 a 2 anos antes do que os homens. Okay, keep going, man.
Yeah, I think it's a really critical point there to understand. Because the girls they hit their growth spurt earlier, so everything is shifted, forward quicker for them. But as they're going through their growth spurt, you don't want to necessarily load heavy. I think that's some of the challenges and maybe some of the errors where people start to load too heavy, because you don't want to compress the body when the body's trying to expand by doing heavy back squats and loading on top of the spine. You want to select exercises that don't necessarily compress the spine together. So your deadlifts or your goblet squats, we hold a kettlebell, those are good alternatives to be able to still load the lower half, but not compress the spine. It's not until they get past their growth spurt where you can really start to, in our opinion, start to compress a little bit.
Perfeito. Para todos aqueles que têm perguntas em português, podem fazê-lo. Se não perceber algum ponto, teremos o prazer de poder repetir e vamos continuar nesse momento de aprendizado. Yeah, keep going,
Yes.
Bryan.
And so you and I have talked a lot about evaluation and testing and things like that, and it's a big part of the whole process. And it's an essential piece of it because it gives you some sort of direction. It provides information. And so you evaluate the athlete, you target some of their specific needs, and then you have this constant monitoring to ensure the improvement is always happening.
Okay.
So when we test, I know this was a question. So what do you do? So you want to look first at basically the stature and structure of the body. These are things like leg length, height, weight, body composition, some of those structural identifiers of body status. There's other things you can do where you can start to do ratios, tibia length versus entire leg length. You can start to look at some of those things to identify potential talent.
So tell me, we have that conversation about athletes who have short to trunk and long legs and long arms, and the other one has long upper body, short legs. So what kind of before you evaluate those type of body type, what you can give as a first advice when you find a player who have a Scottie Pippen body?
Yeah, I think one of the things when you're talking about talent ID, you want to look for the tibia of their leg. Look at the length of that one compared to the entire lower leg. You'll have a tendency to see that people with really long tibias, that lower leg, run really well. They're run really well. Yeah.
100 kilometers, like 100 meters, I can kill it in 4 seconds.
The potential is there. And so some of these anthropometrics can give you some sort of guidance or can be predictive of talent, not necessarily a guarantee, but it can give you it's one of those things where when athletes are being recruited, one of the things that recruiters here always talk about is you can't really teach size. So if I have an athlete that's 6'7" basketball player and he's a point guard, and I have another athlete that's 6'1" and plays the exact same position, and the skill set is the same, I'm probably going to go with the 6'7" guy. And I think that's where you see people that go on to high performance levels. The skill set is the same between a smaller counterpart, but the frame and structure is bigger. So if I'm bigger and I can do the same thing just as fast as you, then I'm gonna be the guy that goes on to a more successful, prominent career. So it's important. Structure is important. Function is really about the ability to move that structure. So now we're going to look at your mobility. We're going to look at stability, flexibility, things like that, and look how do you navigate through those ranges, and how stiff you are going through those. We talked about some athletes that are very stiff and not mobile, maybe not good for a court sport. If I'm a tennis player, I'm a basketball player, you have limited mobility, it's probably not the best sport for you to be in. Maybe a sport that requires less mobility, like a thrower or a shot putter or something like that, you might be better suited for.
Okay.
And then your traditional performance. And so now you're talking about things, those components, the speed, the strength, the power. This is kind of when we talk about athleticism, this is where most people typically go, is look right at those performance metrics to indicate athleticism. As long as you have those 3 buckets there, you've got a pretty good start on an evaluation program.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah, and this is what it does for us. It tells us, strengths and weaknesses. It highlights them. It gives us a comparison to other athletes. similar age and sport. It allows us to set goals, and it gives us a benchmark. It also, and this is what you talked about a lot too, is just success of the training program. Is this training program working? I can, if I have a baseline and testing, I can prove it. So yes, it is working. And then it helps us to target, make it a little bit more individualized. It does provide motivation. It can inspire people. If you test it out and you didn't do well, some people, they get with that chip on the shoulder. It happens every year at the NFL Combine. We have guys that'll go in there and maybe not. Yeah, they don't test well.
The combine, because any combine, doesn't matter what kind of sport, it's like
Yes.
tryout for us here on in Africa and Europe. We call it tryout. In you guys, you call it combine. And then you have a tryout, but it's basically different moment, but they mean almost the same thing.
The same
Just
thing.
for people to understand.
Yep. It's the same
You can
thing.
be really bad on the first day
Yes.
and pulling numbers, but crazy numbers. I saw on the bench press
Yes.
on the combine 2018. I forgot the name of that young athlete for University of Virginia, but at some point I will find the video. I will put the first day he benched 12 reps.
Mm-hmm.
And in fail, it's almost like I was the last guy on the list. The next day, he go to 64 reps on that bench press. That was crazy. But like, no way.
Yeah.
Over 60 reps.
That's crazy.
Yeah, I know. I don't know if they give him some Coca-Cola, but he was blowing up everyone. Keep going, please.
For sure. Yeah, so it can be a trigger for a lot of people. It can identify talent. It gives us an education platform to talk about, and it just helps us to inform areas of safety too, where we can identify potential injury risk associated with the testing outcomes. There is two different ways to look at this evaluation process. You have testing, which is just the collection of the data. The assessment is really what people pay for, is the interpretation of the data, to be able to understand it, to be able to rank it, and then be able to later have some sort of outcome plan to address some of the areas that we found that are weaknesses.
Okay.
So that's it. You collect, you interpret it, and then you report back. And this is what we had talked about too. The reporting back to the shareholders is very important. Either the athlete or yep.
You do that every day, every week, or after such amount of day, and you evaluate. And look, this is where you are. This is where you just what you just achieved. You know, this is your curve of growth. This is like which range peak that you guys select. It's like daily,
so
weekly.
There's a lot of different ones. So if you're doing testing, usually that's on a little bit longer timeline. So, you know, every 4 weeks, every 6 weeks, sometimes it's every 3 to 6 months if you're looking at growth. And then there's monitoring. Monitoring needs to happen more regularly. This is something that can happen every session. We're already really doing it. If you think about the process, we're tracking the weight room, the load. So that's a monitoring that happens every day. We're monitoring speed. You know, there's a lot of fancy stuff with GPS and accelerometers. One of the things we do is we have a radar gun where we can actually see the athlete run and give them a kilometer per second or meters per second or miles per hour. We give them that live, and I can do that every time that they train. So monitoring happens more often. And at maximum, it's every day, every session. I think minimum every 3 weeks you monitor. Then testing is a little bit longer timeline, every 6 weeks, every 3 months, every 6 months, every year, something like that.
Okay. Perfect.
Yeah, and this was just, I just picked out one just to kind of focus on strength. Everyone talks about strength, and just really hone in on the need to be specific or relevant to an age. And we kind of talked about it a little bit earlier, but the strength endurance, you see that row right there. Where does it most impactful? Where does that synergistic adaptation happen? It's usually from 9 to about 11 years old. That's the dark kind of golden spot right there. So we want to focus at 9 years old on strength endurance. Speed and power and speed strength, that happens a little bit older age group, so 10 to about 15 right there. Let's really focus on that quality. And then as they get a little bit older, high school age, girls begin earlier, maximum strength. And we're talking about 85% efforts there.
So we have for you. This is our partner, Juan Inano. You have master degree in sport management from University of Barcelona. And you have a great question for you. Hi guys, Brian. One, which tools do you use to measure those aspects? Two, is the physical preparation of young athletes, no matter the position? You give example as a point guard, as a center, for example. If you keep it linear, or you're changing some volume or etc.
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think on the first one is it depends on the budget. It's usually constrainment of budget as regarding the testing of some of those qualities. So we're fortunate enough that we have force plates, so I can test things like power. I can test speed off of a jump. I can test asymmetry between right and left. So I can look at some of those things in fine detail. For speed, we have timing gates, electronic timing gates, basically lasers. We can look at, and I like to look at the speed. So I want to look at speed in intervals. So I want to go every 5 yards or every 5 meters. I want to see the change in those splits. Because what I've seen is some guys, if I have a guy run a 40-yard dash, or he'll run a 4.2, I may have another guy that ran the exact same 4.2, but the style in which they ran it was different. Some guys, it takes a little bit longer to get to top speed, and he still ran fast, where another guy gets acceleration up really quickly and then falls off. And so there's two different styles that I'd like to be able to see with the testing outcomes. Yeah, so that's what we do. And we have GymAware for strength. So it's basically it's basically a string that measures bar speed. It's a linear transducer is what they call it. But it gives us an indication without having to max out. If I put 135 pounds on the bar, maybe 70 kilos, and I move it as fast as I can, and I move it at 0.5 meters per second, well, it can give me a theoretical 1 rep max rep on that movement. And so if I moved 135, I did 0.5, it's going to say that my max is 185. And so that's a way we can do strength in a safe way.
Perfect.
Yep. And then, for the positions, yes, there are some fundamental athleticism components that you have to get on all athletes, in my opinion. Your speed, your strength, your power, your agility. I want to know that base athleticism on everyone. But I do think there is some very position-specific skill sets that athletes need to go through, like the testing battery we talked about with the combine, where the receivers are going through very specific patterns. The defensive backs are going through specific patterns. So I do think that there is a need for that too, to be a little bit more specialized.
Yeah, because now, not just to help those who doesn't have a lot of know-how about the combines, it's basically a moment that skills, strength, power, everything involved are evaluated from how you say anthropometrics, like the measure of your hands.
Anthropometrics, yep. Anthropometrics, yep.
Everything is just put together to understand your value as a physical force.
Yes.
And
that's
how it can be used to transfer to the skill set of the sport that you evaluate on. Okay? This is the basic, easy understanding of the combine, because a lot of people get confused with a lot of terminology that you guys used on there, combine, you call exhibition games. Now you have it's not an exposure. You have tryouts, you have showcases. Yeah, you have many names and
Yes.
many terminology that sometimes people are like,
Right.
okay, what is that? Just a bunch of guys running back and forth.
Yes.
Yeah,
And
just
you're
to
right.
give them
Every sport has
on
their
it.
own terminology. You're exactly right.
For example, basketball player, they see as everybody ought to understand, basketball is a sport where you have a lot of repetitively sprints and recovering. So they have that light exercise that you go back and forwards like suicide.
Mhm.
So to understand your reaction, speed, front and back, so you can go and recover what kind of speed that you have on this type of situation, this different type of situation games that they put you on it to see really like your physical force. That's what they
Mhm.
see like LeBron James when he doing that. And Zion, everybody's like, ooh, this a grown ass man down there, like with a powerful elephant from his age, you know. Man. Okay,
Yep.
so keep going, Brian. We getting a lot of info, man.
Yeah, and this was the last one here. It's just kind of, what do we do with the COVID situation, and the whole world is trying to figure out what to do with this. And so one thing we know for sure is that athletes are probably not as active as they were before all of this. And so the assumption is that we've got to be able to reduce the scale in which we start to train these athletes coming back to sport. And so this was a really good, this association here in the States put together some sort of guidelines,
Metrics.
yeah, metrics
Mhm.
and guidelines, recommendations of how you should start. And basically, it's the bar graphs here, the second bar graph and the third one here, where it says new student athletes or new head strength coach or return from inactivity. And so we're really looking at that third one there. Week one, this is 50% of what's normal. That's where we should start. And then, that's half of capacity. And then the 30 is 70% capacity. So this is the 30 part. The 20 is 20% capacity and then 10%. So every week we're adding a little bit more capacity to it. But if you look at it, what it's really saying to us is be very smart in the first 2 weeks. Week one, scale back as much as possible. Still trying to get some sort of little training effect. Don't go up too much in week two, evaluate, and then weeks 3 and 4, you can really start to get back to almost normalized training. But I thought that was important, just kind of regarding the situation that we're in right now.
Okay, great. Sorry, I have to. Sorry, I'm back. I'm here. So this is Michael. This is Brian info. If you guys want to get in contact with him at such a point, you guys want to request the slide, the PowerPoint. This is some of his infos. And now we go into the first break to jump to the website and talk about that exciting program that the MGP performance have and the understanding of some volume of training and your story of success of it. Really important to share here. So now, Brian, we need to talk a little bit about the COVID-19 for
Mhm.
athletes. I know that on the slide you have that intro that you talk about this great company who give us there's some metrics info how to coming back after this phase. I'm really happy to hear that MGP will open on Monday.
Mhm.
Come
Yeah.
back. So
Yeah.
at least for me, please make them run.
We have to. We have
Those
to.
young
Yeah.
captives, make them
Yeah.
run. You
Yeah.
know? Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. You have
how
to. You've
guys
got to get
are,
that conditioning back. Hmm.
how you guys are handling? I know that the US is be kind of crazy now with this flu, and here in Africa, especially in Angola, we have a restriction now. It's 50%. We have less cases. Blessing God, we have 3 people are recovering from yesterday. Our total cases around 30, 29 people. but it's just symptomatics. They're not really like bad. The symptomatics is really good, and we want to hear a little bit about that. That you guys are holding up and send some praise for those guys who are passing through these difficult times.
Yeah, yeah. So we're gearing up. We're basically really trying to reduce capacities. I think that's what most people are doing. It's just scaling down your normal training capacities as far as number of bodies in your building. And then on top of that, there's a pretty rigorous entry process to get in. There's a survey, and then there's temperature checks. We make sure that if athletes have traveled, they have to be on a 14-day quarantine. So that's just to get into the building. Once you do make it into the building, there's smaller staff in the building, there's smaller groups, and then you layer on the sanitation protocols that we're calling enhanced protocols, because we normally wipe down, but now there's a secondary wipe down every single hour, and then there's an intensified wipe down after every session. And so we're trying to just make sure that we create a safe environment. We've recommended that our athletes wear masks. All of our coaches will wear masks. We'll have gloves on. We're not mandating that our athletes do it because it's hard to breathe and just don't want to get. There's a lot of political things there where people are kind of fighting back and the choice and things like that. So we're saying that we recommend that you wear a mask, but it's not mandated that you do that. But at the end of the day, we're just trying to protect people from getting this, and it could be devastating for a professional type athlete that's trying to go back for the season to go down with the infection. I mean, you can take down an entire organization, really.
Okay, so I just want to remember the guys that this show is sponsored by Kwanzaa Asia. Is a mobile solution that help you to pay without physical contact. It's like a wallet that we're using here. It's really great and control. So those are our main sponsor, and Angobio. So I will do that em português. Obrigado ao nosso patrocinador Kwanzaa Já, produto Dubai, que ajuda a fazer as suas compras, seus pagamentos online sem te deslocar. É uma maneira fácil, econômica de poder fazer transações no modo virtual e abrir uma conta. Vai já na página do Facebook, @Kwanzaa, terás todas as informações necessárias. Em breve teremos um convidado que irá realmente entrar em detalhes sobre os benefícios desse produto. E também contamos com a parceria de Angobio, uma empresa focada nas fórmulas de antirreagentes para os produtos petrolíferos, que estão a fazer um grande trabalho de apoio às famílias necessitadas. E queremos dar um forte abraço ao Sr. Zé Alves pelo apoio que ele tem dado. One of our sponsors are from Angobio. Those guys are helping a lot, some social person who have issues. And I want to give a big hug for Mr. House, who will be running that and help people on this time of crisis without using pictures or have people to record it. It's there for love for people. It's really important. So now we're going to jump to our second part, is introducing MGP Performance website. Okay, so I will appreciate if you switch off your presentation on your side, so I can share my screen to the people, and you will guide us through your site and explain to the people different programs that you guys have at MGP Performance. That's really important to have. This is my Kenny, my Dallas. So we here. By the way, I like the style of the web page. It's really blue. It's like blue. And
yeah. So MJ has a really strong eye for these type of things. He has a marketing background. So not only is he's an athlete, he's a businessman, but he also has a marketing background too. So everything's very clean looking, very sharp.
No, this is so. Let's go through the site.
Okay.
the next generation in athlete development. So what is all about this intro right here?
Yeah, so that's our basically our youth program, and so we have branded it the next generation, basically next gen, and what we're
Next gen.
doing is athletic development, and so this is not necessarily about a particular sport, but it's about the athlete developing for sport. And so we don't teach sports skills, we don't do basketball training from a skill side, we train them like an athlete. And so all those components of athleticism that we talked about, the speed, the strength, suppleness, the strategy, the skill, and stamina, we integrate all those components into every training session, and then we filter it by the age. And so it's very specific and relevant based on the age. And so there's essentially an elementary program we call Learn to Train. It's basically 9 to 11 years old. We work on those specific synergistic adaptation elements inside the program. The next one is the high school prep program. This is basically for your middle school athletes, 12, 13, and 14. And then you have a high school program, which is 15 to 18 years old, college prep. And within each one of those, there is some really interesting things that happen. The middle school program is extremely popular. And what we've seen is that's when the athletes are in that make it or break it stage. There's a lot of volume of athletes that still play sports, but there's not many positions left because we're starting to make cuts at that time spot. And so now athletes are really focused on getting better athletically so they can compete versus their competition for a spot on the roster.
Great. So this is about the new genes. So you guys start earlier. I know that NGP Performance have facility in Dubai, in China, in some states, and in US. And I heard, and actually I was applying for the certification at your new generations program in China. Can you tell me a little bit about it and how it works? And
So we
what
have
is the target time of the frame time of of learning the program down in China and the period that is happening?
Yes. So we have two different ways that you can get involved with our program. One is the certification. You can come down and do it, certification in China. Right now, we operate that on an annual cadence where 3 or 4 times a year we'll go and teach a course in China. The goal is to be able to get that to where we can go everywhere in the world. Then also have some of those educations at our facility as well. The second way, besides the education certification, is to come down and do like an externship or a volunteer program. We can come down and spend time at MJP Dallas and shadow our system live, get some hands-on application in conjunction with learning some of the theories of why we do what we do. And so that's a 12-week experience that we have those seasonally, so winter, spring, summer, and fall. And so you can also participate that way as well.
Okay, perfect. So I will scroll down. I know you guys have a bunch of stuff here. Oh, by the way, tell me about those sensors, man. Those gadgets that this guy have. I know there's this biomechanics scan. So watching his body movement, motion, and execution from the skeleton part, right? I'm not wrong?
That's exactly right. So we're very fortunate that Nike is our #1 sponsor. And so there's a biomechanics laboratory inside of Michael Johnson Performance in Dallas. There's only 2 in the world. The other one's at the world headquarters at Nike on the West Coast. So we're very fortunate to be able to leverage some of that technology. But yeah, what we're looking at there is 3D motion capture technology. It looks at millimeters of movements in space. And so we're able to get some very detailed and minute data from the way humans move. It's extremely important to Nike to be able to get that because they want to learn to make better products, better apparel, better shoes. But the benefit for us is we're able to learn how athletes move. And so it helps us with programming. And so we've had so many different insights that we've been able to snatch from the data that they've allowed allowed us to have that's made our program much better. And it just takes it further than what I can see from the coach's eye. I'm getting some hard, real data that's very impactful for the programming.
Great.
Mm-hmm.
So your chance is to help every athlete to reach his or her full athletic potential regardless of age. Thank you. I still have a shot.
That's right. The window closes. It closes. There's still a shot, but it's
This is really close. Yeah, sport natural ability. This is nice. This guy has some shoulders. Tell me which athlete that for all these years keep on your mind, the way he grow, the way he train, the way his body just respond to the training. You always have that guy, that you always remember for something, the way explosion, something. Tell us a little bit about that story. Which guy who keep on your mind as a example to show to the rookie coming right now?
So besides you, 5 years of athlete.
Hey, we
You were
have some
special.
fun.
Yeah, you were
We
special.
have some fun. Hey, I want to tell a story here in front of everyone. I was injured. I have like meniscus surgery. I have surgery in Portugal. So I called Brian, say, hey, Brian, I just got surgery. I want you to help me get back on track because like my knee is just without stability. And after the first week, I was doing a one leg squat. Now that was like one leg lunge with 40, 50 kilo each. Bamboo, you remember? Coach Marguerite was come with the Chinese team. He was like, who is that guy?
Yeah.
My knee was just shaking. I was in sweat. I'm like, I have to bring that back. I have people to punish the bike at home. So keep going.
That was awesome. Yeah. So we had some great ones, man. We had Shaquem Griffin that played out of Central Florida, UCF. He's the athlete that has a birth defect on his arm, so he only has one hand. And he made it to the NFL with one hand, first time ever. And so we were able to train him, and you start to understand, like, wow, if you can overcome that and make it to the highest level of professional football in the world, you can do anything. And so it's just so inspiring to see someone that does not limit his abilities or capacities or even his mindset through training. Just adapt to what the situation is, the environment, and go execute. And so that's sort of the learnings I took from training him that I've never forgotten. And there are no excuses, really. When you train people like that, there are no excuses when you train other people. And so I think he just always stands out to me.
Great. No, this is really inspiring. And yes, this is a great lesson that we can get from him. He's still in the NFL. He's still playing.
Mm-hmm. Yep, he's with the Seattle Seahawks. Him and his brother play on the same team. It's crazy. Yeah, they're twin brothers.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So this is the program that I was talking about. I was asking you about is the next gene.
Yes.
It's really nice. I love the concept. I'm a big fan of this concept right here because it's really important to have our young kids to learn the basic motion.
Yes.
But now, can you give me, I know this is private, but if it doesn't bother you, can you give us the main key movement that you guys training, movement now, the main key muscles that you guys targeting? For example, mobility, biomechanics, because at this age you put no weight, but it's kind of high performance training that you're giving to the kids because they look like professional. Right. They're 5 years old or 6 years old, they have to get in time, get dressed, training for like 35 or 45 minutes intense, and you have someone to yell at him, faster, faster, faster.
Yeah. You have to start with the center. So, the core, of course, you have to make sure the trunk is aligned, but it's really about developing these movement patterns at this young age. there's some really compelling and strong research that suggests if we can get the pattern secured and sort of automated early on, that the strength curve is so much more of a vertical curve rather than this sort of flat curve as far as development in later years. So it's very, very important for us to start with the center and to make sure that the patterns are crystal, that there's no flaws in these patterns, so to speak.
Yeah, I see where it's coming with the blue. With the blue color, I know it's MJ blue color.
Yep.
Yeah. The only one who can beat me is me.
It's
That's
true.
really him. This is really him. I saw him
Yep.
running in 2000 Olympics. I met him here. It was a great moment. He's a great person. He come here run with our Olympic athletes. For Olympic athlete is Sayovo. They have like a little running exhibition that was really great. I have the honor to meet him in person. He's a legend, inside
Yes.
and out of the court, great mind, sharp,
Yes.
and those gold shoes, like
Clean.
in the
Still.
house, they were like,
He
oh,
said something that I probably will never forget. He talked about, giving his best effort. He said that when I trained and when I competed, I just wanted to give my very best effort. And then he said something where he said, my best effort just happened to be the best in the entire world. And I was like, wow, that's it right there. Just give your best effort and just may be the best in the world. No other human can be better than you in this moment. I thought that was a powerful statement, man. I'll never forget.
he's still in shape. At least he still look in shape.
Oh yeah. Yeah, he's always very active.
No, that's great. So they started. You guys starting his project in 2007. Passion to help athletes in all age in any sport reach their full potential. So this program is used to the same fundamentals and technique that brought Michael record breaking success.
Mhm.
So great place to be. I was there before we closed the web page, and I want this is something really important for all our folks. I have teams here is to understand that sport must be followed with medicine. So physiotherapies, recovering, treatment really help the players to perform if they're really healthy. And something that I love when I was there, that was like the jacuzzi, the massage, the treatment that I have down there. You guys just break my bones, but that was so cool. The fun.
Yeah, I
You
mean,
guys, this is funny because actually we pay for you guys to torture us.
it's crazy.
I
And multiple
know.
sessions too. You keep coming back. I'm like, wow, why do people pay for this? They must love
Yeah,
it.
this is yeah, and you guys have a great therapy teams. You really like know what they're doing, understand each needs,
Mhm.
and it's really important to tell that. If you see, you guys have all this service right there, manual therapy, myofascial. This is something really now is really in trend. A lot of people talk about it.
Mhm.
Myofascial here, myofascial release here. A lot of people are talking about it. It's a great therapy. System drive needless. What's that Nord Martech
That's,
sequential
yeah,
compression therapy? What's that?
that's the bags that you put on your legs. Basically, it's a compressive bag that shoots air into the bag and put on your legs or your upper body, and it basically squeezes blood from one area and moves it to another area. So it creates a blood flow, basically
Mhm.
captures blood in one area, then flushes it throughout into another area. It's just great for a passive recovery tool where the athlete basically, you've done your work for today, you trained,
Mhm.
did your speed, your strength, you go back and you put the bags on the legs,
Mhm.
20 minutes, just relax and let the system work for you. And a lot of recovery now it's the physical, the passive recovery, but it's also the mental recovery too, the relaxation. Where there's some pretty compelling research that talks about if you can relax the mind, get into a mindfulness state of mind, the physical recovery happens much quicker, much faster.
Perfect. Now that you passed through that, and you guys have just a lot of services, a lot of things to offer, and I want just right quick, sorry, to remember. Actually, to remember now, I have one question for you. This is my question to a brother who was an athlete. If they give you the shot to go back in time, what did you do to
Yeah.
achieve the results? What are the three keys that you can give to your younger brothers that are in motherland? Say, look, putting on your side,
Yeah.
what I would recommend you to do is gonna be those three keys.
Yeah.
Pum, 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 pum.
For me, what I would do is I would go back and I would spend more time on the mind, on the psychology of sport to understand human behavior, human decision makings, how athletes are persuaded into committing to something, accepting what they have to do, and then executing on it. I think those are things coaches have to learn, that not everyone's just going to be hyper motivated to come in and train every day. And that just does not, it's not real. That's a fantasy. And so to be able to learn psychology and motivational techniques, we got to have that as part of it. I think also too, you talked about the sports medicine side of it, learning more about the sports medicine, the recovery, some of those things. And then from my standpoint is learning more on the business side, because we're purely performance. But this
No,
we're in
my question,
we're in the training business.
I know, but no, my question was you as an athlete,
Oh yeah. So
you
with
as an
that,
athlete, player.
I would have loved to have started earlier. Most of the time, people our age said, man, I wish I would have had this when I was younger. Yeah, we
Yeah,
did. And then when we started training, we were already in high school. It was mainly weightlifting, and the whole performance, the speed, all those other, remember the components we talked about, strength was just one of them. And so you only did one little vertical, but there's speed and suppleness and strategy. We didn't address any of those other ones. And so I would have loved to have had some more well-roundedness in my training program and not be just one-sided.
okay. No, that's perfect. Just remember, you guys, that we here with the support of Banco Banco Bay e Kwanzaa, EJA, em que a idade mínima para abrir uma conta é de 15 anos, flexibilidade e simplicidade. Pode ser por via telefone, so this service is an online payment. In Kwanzaa Asia, you can open it with at least 15 years old. It's flexible, simple. You can do everything from your phone and use local currency. So it's really quite a great thing, and yeah, that's perfect. So, Brian, that was great to have you. Thanks again for everything. I think that we wrap it up 1 hour and 30 minutes. That was so great. Um, Say hello to the family and to everyone who was there and watching us during this time. You can keep throwing up your question here, and we're gonna make sure that they come into you. And or if you want to ask for the PowerPoint, Brian will be more than pleased to send it to you. If you have a last word, please let's wrap it up.
Yeah, well, thank you very much for providing this platform and this audience. This is we talked about the time I got to train the Angola team. That was the first ever. This is my first international presentation to be on you. So, man, you just keep introducing me to new things in my life that I will never forget, and I'm always going to be very grateful and very appreciative of. And the goal is always just to help people out. That's sort of our mission is to help regardless of your situation, and whatever platform we can continue to help athletes out, we want to do it.
Appreciate. So for sure in the future we're gonna have new announcements and more things that we're gonna have the
For
pleasure
sure.
to share with our
For
brother
sure.
here in Africa. And don't forget, the Scout Life is based on how African athletes can achieve excellence. So it's about learning and understand for people who have experience and pass through that moment. So have a good one, and thanks again. Bye.